What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and we are back to talk more Detroit Lions football. Morgan, the playoffs are officially here, as is the snow, and I'm only excited about one of these things right now.
Yeah, it has been cold, man. Like when I left work today, I'm usually not in office on Mondays, but y'all don't care. Moving some things around, but yeah, I was in the office and leaving work, I was a little cold. I was like, oof, should have worn my big jacket. But yeah, I am excited about the playoffs, man. And I'm once again, I think I've said it a gazillion times on this channel and at Pride of Detroit through writing, but I'm always happy that we play in a dome. Always grateful for Ford Field.
I was going to say, happy to be playing in a dome. Happy to be playing on Saturday this week, which we're going to get to that in a little bit. But like, there's a lot of pluses about the Lions being in the playoffs these days. In today's video, we are basically, we are going to be talking about the Lions matchup against the Washington Commanders. We are also going to be talking about the Lions Pro Bowl or All Pro selections because we didn't get a chance to react to that when that news dropped. But before we get to any of those things, Morgan, let's just do a quick rapid fire of the playoff picture based off of the games that we saw during the wild card round. A number of great games, a couple blowouts, a couple one-sided ones, but for the most part, I think a good slate of first round games.
Yeah, and I saw some people complaining, but Baltimore and Pittsburgh, Baltimore blew the doors off at first, and I was like, oh, this might get ugly. Mm-hmm. But then, Pittsburgh hung around, made it not look as ugly. Washington and Tampa was a terrific game that came down to the very end, and really just like a key turnover was the difference in that game, to be honest with you, that I know we're going to talk about. But really close game. Philadelphia and Green Bay was interesting for the most part until the end. Jordan Love.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then to Houston, and I enjoyed watching the Houston and Chargers game, man, but just because I like it when because me and you said, I think you were a little more like, you didn't think it was going to be a blowout.
Yeah, I was a little more in favor of Houston in that one. I thought Houston had a much better chance of making that a game, and it turned out to be very one-sided.
Well, they beat them up. It was it looked like a full what they did to the Lions in the first half, where you're just kind of caught off guard and stumbling. They did that for a full 60 minutes, dang near, to the Chargers. Because Herbert, people are going to pile on Herbert, man. Social media quarterback, this and that. I still think he's good, but they made him look bad.
I was going to say, both quarterbacks didn't look great in that game.
No,
I think they combined for 6 turnovers, maybe 7.
Yeah.
They were throwing picks. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, you have Houston beating the Chargers 32-12. Baltimore beat the Steelers 28-14. Bills stomped the Broncos 31-7. That one looked like it was going to be something, and then that quickly turned into nothing. And then, yeah, like you said, Eagles beat the Packers 22-10. That game wasn't as decisive as the score looks. That was an ugly game for a majority of it.
Yeah, man. And really, if I'm Philadelphia, I'm looking myself in the mirror today, okay, yeah, we're on. You don't ever apologize for a win, certainly not in the playoffs, but that didn't look great against the Packers team. You heard some of the commentary today from, locker cleanout day from Tucker Kraft and Jair Alexander. The word I'll use is disjointed, maybe. It did not seem like things were cohesive in there. Sounds like they have some stuff to sort out. Still a talented roster, obviously, but yeah, they just did not, Jordan Love did not play well, to put it bluntly, and they still found a way to hang around in that game for a good while. So yeah, you're not going to complain if you're Philadelphia on to the next round, but at the end of the day, you're looking at it at a week to week. We got to come better with that in the divisional round, regardless of who they end up playing in terms of Minnesota or the Rams.
Yeah, I was going to say, as good as that defense played, Jalen Hurts definitely looked like a quarterback that hadn't played football in a couple weeks. But then, like you said, moving on to Tampa and Washington, right? Tampa gets that last-minute field goal, goes up 23-20. So they are coming to Detroit, and the Lions get their first playoff game this Saturday, and I expect it to be an electric environment, right? And it's one that I'm still approaching with caution. Obviously, we're not going to get into film study today, Morgan, but just your opening thoughts or your where you're starting at right now when it comes down to the Washington Commanders, and what do you think this matchup between them and the Lions is actually going to look like come Saturday night?
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. We're obviously both Miko and I, and I'm sure a lot of y'all watching this, watch the game from front to back, Tampa and Washington. It was a good game, but I want to watch the all 22 back at least 2 times here, and then we'll come back with the film study. So definitely look out for that. But initial thoughts, The football gods and the schedule gods did us a solid, right? Saturday, 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
Like you get a, that's beautiful, man. Like I'm not even a drinker like that, but I know a lot of people will be appreciative to have Sunday, hopefully on the couch celebrating like a victory, a nice little victory Sunday. Do you hear me?
bro.
That'd be
Definitely looking
beautiful.
forward to that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we want, right? But yeah, initial thoughts. Washington overachieved this year, in my opinion, right? Like there's,
Hmm.
a lot of stuff. The last time the Lions played Washington was early 2022. They ended up getting the better of them at home, and they've won 6 out of the last 7 times they've played, which used to be like a very one-sided affair, man. Like back in the day, like
Yeah.
I remember I was at the game in Washington, well, Landover, Maryland. They beat the Commanders. I want to say it was 2013. It was the game before Nate Burleson broke his arm in the
Okay.
pizza incident. Remember that when
Yeah.
he was like reaching for the pizza? If y'all remember that, you know you're a sicko.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a completely different team. Like down to the ownership. Obviously, the quarterback Jayden Daniels is terrific. I do think they've overachieved a little bit. Obviously, outside of Philadelphia, the NFC East was a little clunky. But Washington played Philadelphia twice, or played them tough twice, excuse me. They beat a good Bucks team at home, like on the road, excuse me. And I'm excited to. This is kind of what we were looking for, just not like we were ducking smoke from Minnesota or the Rams. It's just beating a team that many times in like a calendar year is a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get something fresh. Definitely not taking them for granted. And if you heard Dan Campbell today speak, we're recording this Monday night. He was very, about it. He's like, yeah, someone asked about, that game in February. And he was like, we're not focusing on that at all. I'm paraphrasing here. He's like, we got Washington and we know we got a tough task coming up. So I don't think it's not a shoe in. I've seen some people be like, oh yeah, we're going to beat them. Like, could the Lions beat them up a little bit? Yeah, sure. But also
Hmm.
Washington could come in here and steal a victory. That's the beauty and the pain of football, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I very much think that this game against the Commanders could turn into what people thought the Bucks game and the Commanders game was going to be, which was like just high scoring, like not the greatest defense, but a ton of scoring. It still could be that here in Detroit because while the defense looked so much better against Minnesota, right? This is still a different animal when you talk about the Commanders, when you talk about what they have in Jayden Daniels. Yes, Terry McLaurin is not Justin Jefferson, but he is still a damn good receiver. One of probably the most underrated receivers in football. Like I don't think that's a stretch to say that Scary Terry is highly underrated for how good he's been with the same team with no matter who you've thrown at quarterback. Like him and Mike Evans get to carry that torch, I think, better than anybody else in the league at this point. But yeah, when you talk about you know, the Commanders maybe overachieving a bit. I think that starts with Jayden Daniels and what he's been able to bring to them. Because when you pick a quarterback second in the draft, Morgan, like you're hoping that you're getting your franchise starter. You're hoping that you're getting somebody that's going to take you from the pits of obscurity and then put you into relevance. And two teams got to do that at the top of the draft, the Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders. One team is doing that much better than the other one. And I think that's a credit, not to just like the situations they landed in, because I think objectively speaking, a lot of people would still say that Caleb Williams landed in the better spot talent wise, like roster wise. Jayden Daniels has just found a way, though, of elevating everyone around him and has really sparked something in Washington. So I'm right there with you where in a certain extent, like it does feel like they've overachieved, but it's off the strength of this young quarterback that has really injected some life into this team that again has had some pieces here or there, but he's clearly getting more out of the talent that's there than previous quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I love that you made that point too, because I think at the beginning of the season, football fans, especially in Chicago, would have told you unequivocally Caleb Williams' supporting cast is superior to Jayden Daniels. And, most people would have probably agreed with you. I think I would have as well. You just looked at that depth chart. Although the offensive line in Chicago obviously did not perform up. That's a whole different video.
Sure.
But yeah, with Washington, it's all there because of Daniels, right? Like Cliff Kingsbury is doing a good job. Their offensive coordinator, if you guys remember that name, doing a good job with Jayden Daniels. They do a good mix of everything. Like you said, Miko, they do a good amount of design runs with him where it's like, read options and he can make you pay there. They do a lot of misdirection. I do think Terry McLaurin, to your point too, Miko, is people are going to we've known about Scary Terry for a minute. Like he's a baller. Like he's a
Yeah.
dog, really. But he was in QB purgatory forever, right? Like it was just a revolving door there. And now he's got a guy back there, and he, went off for 1,000 yards and easily their most dynamic player in the passing game. So yeah, I'm excited to watch this because I think the Lions defense is going to come with a chip on their shoulder because they're probably going to hear this chatter about like, oh yeah, it might be a shootout, this and that. And he's like, dang, we just showed y'all we are kind of about that life. But I think that'll be a good one, a good battle to watch because defensively, I don't know that Washington's going to be able to do much against the Lions, man. It's tough to contend with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I like you said, we'll get into it a little bit more in the film study, but I think like you look at the game that they played against Tampa Bay, right? Like I think if you're a Washington Commanders fan, like you're probably like, no, like our defense can clearly help, contain an offense, but I would always caution that like, yo, Detroit's a different animal versus
Much.
Tampa, right?
Yeah.
And I do think though there is going to be something to this game of like, okay, which team makes the biggest mistake, right? Whether that's a turnover, whether that's penalties, like those types of things are going to loom big because I think they loomed big in last night's game when you talk about Tampa versus Washington. Which defense gets the most stops and things of that nature, which coach makes the coaching mistake because clearly both Dans because this is going to be a Dan off. This is going to be like a battle of which coach is going to take a fourth down call that they probably shouldn't. And I said it on Twitter, and I'm rolling with it into this game. I think we could see a record for number of fourth down attempts between these two coaches. Riverboat Ron is no longer in Washington, but Dan Quinn has picked up that torch, and he's perfectly fine with going for it on fourth down.
Yeah, and it helps too, right? Because when you have a quarterback like Jayden, it's just something else to deal with. Like as a defender, Miko, like as with a running quarterback, you're inserting an extra blocker automatically, right, into the scheme.
Yep.
Okay, so when you're thinking about fitting up, a design run, a design quarterback power, counter that they're doing, you name it, you're now accounting for an extra blocker because that running back's making himself useful now rather than the quarterback you're -1 because you're handing the ball off. It sounds simple, but
Yeah.
from a defensive standpoint, guys, it's tough, man. It's an additional headache. And then you mix in, they do a good amount of RPO where he'll have it, he's in that mesh point and he's sitting there, and he can pull it out. And that's when he can make you pay there too. So, and he's a heady, like he's very calm, man. I think he's going to do big things in this league going forward because he was cool, calm, and collected last night. Like even when that kicker doinked it off the crossbar and it went in.
Yep.
He was just like set up and was happy. I'm like, dang, that's a cold man. It's cold.
He definitely doesn't carry himself like a rookie quarterback. Like you said, cool, calm, and collected. Whether things are going right, whether things are going wrong, like he never seems to be rattled at any point in the game. And so it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to have that same demeanor in Ford Field. Because as much as we can talk about, all of the things that Jayden Daniels brings from a talent perspective, the Lions got home field advantage for a reason. This home field is something different. And I made a comment on Twitter, and people have been sure to remind me that Ford Field is not going to be like Tampa was, right? We are not going to have this influx of Washington fans because like Detroit just rolls that deep and they're constantly there. They're going to constantly make their presence felt. And I think I said it last week, Morgan, where I think it's something that the fans take very personally in knowing that they actually have an impact on the game. Like it's not just like, hey, you're here to be a spectator. Like, no, you're here to impact the game as well. You're just as important in some respects to being able to get those false starts, to being able to confuse the offense and things like that, and being able to impact momentum. Like there's a reason why you wanted home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt. I completely like the fans really do come ready. Like I was looking at the in my section the other day on Ticketmaster. I think there were 6 tickets available in the whole section, man. So yeah, and that's why the ticket price is so high in my opinion when you see the average, like Jeremy wrote that article about the average ticket price. I think that's ballooned a little bit because people will be stupid and like list their tickets for like $6,000 a piece, like sure, if you want to pay
because you're hoping that you can make a big lump sum of money.
Yeah. But if you really, really want to, you know what I'm saying? But then ultimately they're probably I do think people do that because shoot, I have a cousin that does that sometimes. Excuse me, English. But yeah, I really do. I think that's why that ticket, that number's inflated even a little bit more. But yeah, man, Ford Field, they're going to come ready. I think it'll be on par with the atmosphere last year with the Rams and the Bucks. This crowd knows what to do. It's a
I was gonna
different
say, I think
atmosphere.
this fan base knows what's at stake, right? Like last year, it was just the whole thing of like, hey, we're here, we have a chance of winning a home playoff game, like let's impact it. But it's like, even though this isn't new, there's still that extra oomph at it to it where it's like, hey, like we have a chance of making to the Super Bowl. If we win this game, we're right back in the NFC Championship game, and we're a game
Just
out from
like
the
that.
Super Bowl. So yeah, I definitely expect the home crowd to come ready to impact the game and everything like that. Switching gears a little bit away from the playoffs into some other big news that happened leading up into wild card weekend was the announcements of the All Pro selections, Morgan. And this was something that obviously last week we got Pro Bowl, or earlier last week we got Pro Bowl selections, and we found out all the different lines that made the Pro Bowl. But there was an omission from that Pro Bowl list that a lot of people took notice of. Kirby Joseph may not have made the Pro Bowl, but he did make the All Pro, and he was one of 6 Lions to be named an All Pro. The other 4, or the other 3 that were first team All Pro, amon-ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, and Jack Fox, were all named All Pros. And then you also had Frank Ragnow and Khalif Raymond making second team All Pro. Khalif making it as a special teams, or as a kick returner. Sorry, punt returner. So first and foremost, Morgan, like let's start with Kirby, because I think again his omission from the Pro Bowl was the thing that got a lot of people kind of buzzing about the Pro Bowl selection of like, wait, how does the guy that's leading the league in interceptions not make it to the Pro Bowl? That was never in doubt, it seems like, when it comes down to the All Pro selection, as he got 37 of the 50 votes for first team.
Yeah, because I mean the statistics were there, man. I don't really know what happened with the Pro Bowl. I think probably something stupid if I had to guess, but he got what counts, right? Like that's what you ask anyone around, man. That's the benchmark. Pro Bowls are fun. It's something you can add to your little signature at the end of your career and everything like that. But that Associated Press All Pro, those are the things that matter, man. And it's about what I would have picked. I forgot Jack Fox, man? I don't know. I don't think about punting a lot. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
I
I
know he's
mean
awesome.
I was gonna say, it's like, he's awesome, and then it's like, hey, Jack Fox made all pro, and you're like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I like it. I just don't. It's not something like our football team is 15-2. It's not like something I think of like, man, we're punting the heck out of that ball, though. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the thing that makes it funnier, is like there's been games this season when Jack didn't get to punt, and so it's
That didn't
like,
do anything except hold. Yeah, bro. Yeah, go
and
ahead.
they were still just like, nah, he's first team.
Sure. Sometimes it pays to be amazing like the Lions are right now. But yeah, I know there was some everything in my opinion. If you guys don't know how all pros work, in my opinion, right? Like I'm not trying to be preachy here, but it's almost like it has to be an unseated thing, right? Like you're there until you're knocked off your perch, like firmly.
Mm-hmm.
And like you see it sometimes, like at the end of guys' careers, they get like 1 or 2, depending on like extra all pros. You're like, nah, did they deserve that one? You think? But they get it because it's their 7th or 8th in a row or whatever. Like Jason Kelsey got a few of them at the end there. Where I'm like, you're awesome, but are you are you the best anymore?
I mean, I would argue that Aaron Donald had a couple near the end of his career where it's like he
Exactly.
wasn't
Great point.
quite the same dominant force. He was still Aaron Donald, but like he wasn't putting up the numbers he was when he was winning Defensive Player of the Year awards.
No, but he's still going to get it because he's Aaron Donald. Exactly. Thank you, bro. That's a perfect point. So people were like a little bit people I respect too, some offensive line people that I really content creators that I respect in the community. Duke Manyweather, who runs the facility out there on the West Coast, that everyone goes to. OL Masterminds, check that out. But yeah, he both of them took umbrage with it. They wanted Lane Johnson, his first team, but Penei was first team last year and he's 23. Like he's going to rattle off 8, 9, 10. Like he's going to challenge that Anthony Munoz, who's the GOAT, like at I think 9 all consecutive all pros, which is crazy. So I think Panay is going to be right there. So I know there was that stupid thing in Lane Johnson's locker, right?
Yeah.
About the stats that are arbitrary. I'm like, what are we doing here, man?
It's a weird thing with offensive linemen, right? Because no one talks about stats until stuff like this happens, I feel like.
Exactly. It's a
Right?
great
Like
point too.
I'll be completely honest with you. Prior to Panay being named first team and Lane Johnson being named second team, like I would have been like, yeah, Panay had a better season, but I would have not been able to tell you like, well, how many sacks has Panay just allowed that season? Like not without looking it up. And the same with Lane Johnson. But I off of just reputation more so with Lane Johnson and watching Panay every week, I would be able to say like, no, these are the best two right tackles in football. We do the same thing with Trent Williams, right? Like not everyone is watching Trent Williams play, but it's the same thing in line with what we were just saying with Jason Kelsey and Aaron Donald. If you are available and you're playing, and if you're at least playing relatively well, specifically on offensive line, because there's not big stats to be attributed to you, like most people just look at, okay, well, who's been routinely the dominant force at that position? And it's like, well, that's probably the person that's going to be first team. The same could be said for Frank at second team, right? Like, I don't know if there's anything I can tell you specifically on what kept Frank from being first team, but like Frank being second team makes perfect sense to me because I think if he's not the best center in football now, he's definitely top two. So him being second team all pro doesn't really bother me because I understand that maybe somebody had a better season. I just don't know in what category you're talking about that in.
Yeah, and exactly. And you really have to like be a football junkie to really be able to speak on offensive line. You know what I mean? And I watch obviously all of our snaps, but it's something I pay attention to for other teams too. And I kind of figured Frank was going to get second if he got anything, just because Creed Humphrey at Kansas City, like I think he's going to rattle
Creed
off.
Humphrey from Kansas City.
It's just going to be how it is.
That stepped in for Jason Kelsey, from what I've heard, was having a good season. Jurgens. Yeah. So like,
yep.
It wouldn't have been a surprise if Frank didn't make it, because I'd have been like, oh, if you had told me that it was Creed Humphrey and Cam Jurgens, I'd be like, well, yeah, those are two really good centers.
Yeah,
Frank is in the mix, right?
Yeah.
I get it, right? There's money that's attached to being all pro. There's a level of like pride that's attached to that as well. So like I don't specifically fault Lane Johnson for being upset. Obviously, like you should expect and you should act as if you're the best right tackle in football. But I think if you think from a talent perspective that there's a huge gap between you and Penei Sewell, I think that's incorrect. I think Penei is just as dominant at his position as you are at that position as well. And I think what Penei is capable of doing is the thing that kind of separates him from what Lane Johnson has been able to do. Like Penei Sewell is trending in that direction, Morgan, of like the Trent Williams of right tackles. Like he's that athletic, he's that impactful, he's that dominant, and he's not just blocking, right? It's not just pass blocking, it's not just run blocking. It's going out there and catching passes. It's going out there and being involved in trick plays. Like he's revolutionizing what it means to play offensive line, that you just don't have to be this big guy that takes on blocks. Like you can actually be involved in the offense in a couple of different ways. So again, I think at the end of the day, these are still two of the best right tackles in football. The issue is you also have Tristan Wirfs that moved over to left tackle. Like they can't put two right tackles on as first team. It's just how things are kind of put together right now.
Wirfs is a dog, man. Like first ever to be named all pro at left tackle and right tackle, which is incredible. Mailata got second team, which is crazy because Mailata and Lane Johnson both were on second team all pro. It'd be really nice if Gio Manu could have like a Mailata arc, man, to his career, because we'd be cooking in a couple of years.
I was gonna say,
but yeah,
going back to, I was gonna say really quick, going back to Pro Bowl, imagine Tristan Wirfs being upset that he didn't get Pro Bowl. He wasn't like a first team Pro Bowl selection, but yet Lane Johnson and Penei were, and neither of them played left tackle.
That's what I'm saying. It was just boiled down to votes. Like there could be a year in like 5 or 6 years when Penei might not be first team Pro Bowl, and he's gonna be like, okay, what, I got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that's how it works. I wrote an article about it. I didn't want to come across disingenuous either way, because Lane Johnson has been a generational tackle. Like he's been the best right tackle this generation for a while. He's 34 though, so obviously the last like 10 years he's been dominant. But Penei's on like we talked about, like an Anthony Munoz arc right now, if we want to like talk some anime, you know what I'm saying? Like that's his arc. Like it's some crazy stuff. So not to take anything away from Lane Johnson, but yeah, Lane Johnson's bread and butter forever too has been his ability to protect and against edge rushers, like in pass pro, right? Like he's an excellent pass blocker. But Penei, and yeah, he's probably cleaner right now in terms of pass protection. Like Penei get beat here and there, just off some weird stuff, but the things Panay does in the open field, like you said, Miko, and then even just like running duo to his side, right? And him climbing and getting to a linebacker that he shouldn't be able to get to. And then an 8-yard run for Jameer turns into a 48-yard run. Those are the things that I think people think about when they write in Panay's first team All Pro.
The only other thing that we have left to talk about when it comes to All Pro is there's one omission, and I think it's still debatable, but I think it's people are definitely struggling to see how this person didn't make at least second team All Pro, and that is Brian Branch. The name that I saw people specifically point out was Buda Baker, and they were just like, how does Buda Baker get second team All Pro and Brian Branch doesn't, when he has, again, the inverse of this, right? The whole inverse of the Lane Johnson Panay Sewell conversation. This is the Brian Branch Buda Baker conversation. Brian Branch has better numbers across the board outside of tackles. Buda Baker has way more tackles than Brian Branch does, but Brian Branch has more passes defended. He has more interceptions. I think they have the same number of forced fumbles. And I think Brian Branch has more sacks. But other than that, like there's this question mark of what does BB have to do to get his name into an All-Pro type of conversation.
I think it's a next year thing, right? Like almost like Buda Baker needs to be, because Buda's won it a couple times, right? Not won it, but been named All Pro. I don't have it in front of me, but it's more than a couple times. So I think off that rip, right? Like it's some name recognition, right? Like he's getting it because how long has Buda been in the league? Even it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. He's definitely, obviously, yeah, he's definitely well seasoned in the league at this point. But I agree with you. Like there is something to be said about Brian Branch is still relatively new and only his second year in the NFL and only his first year at safety. So it's not like the possibility of him getting an All-Pro selection at safety is completely out of the question. But I feel like we were having this exact same conversation last year when it was him at nickel and he didn't get the nickel vote. And it was just like, okay, well, he'll definitely get it next year if he has just as good of numbers and just as big of an impact, which he did, and yet different position, same result.
Yeah, and like I wanted to pull it up, but Buda Baker drafted in 2017 was in first team All Pro as a rookie, then again in 2020, second team in 2021, second team again 2024. So it hasn't been consecutive, and he's been a Pro Bowler in every season except 2018. So that's a decorated veteran. I think if BB gets to spend another year at safety again with Kirby, I think he'll be right there again with, then the Lions will hopefully have 2 All-Pro players in the secondary, and that'd be pretty good too.
Yeah, I don't think there's, again, I saw one person specifically ask like how many more passes defended, how many more interceptions. I don't even necessarily know if it's that. I just think, like, to your point, it's that consistency. It's constantly being heralded as one of the best safeties in the NFL. And I think we don't think about it often because safeties aren't what they were a few years ago when you got to be like those enforcers across the middle. But there are some good safeties across the NFL. When you talk about Kyle Hamilton, when you talk about Derwin James, when you talk about Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, Xavier McKinney had a really good year. Buda Baker is an established veteran. There's a number of names that you still have to climb over to be able to get into that conversation. But I do think, just like we said last year, I think Brian Branch is right there on the cusp of it. And it wouldn't surprise me if next year, knowing the type of player BB is, this is 2 years in a row where he's going to feel like he was kind of shortchanged. He's going to be coming into next year with a huge chip on his shoulder.
He had tweeted something out too, which made me laugh. Like, I forget what it was, but basically like, oh, okay, like with some emojis. So he's quiet, man, but he runs on some venom if you like turn him up a little bit, you know what I mean? Like,
this I expect us to get a heavy dose of BB in the playoffs, because I feel like he's going to kind of keep that as a silent form of motivation for him to have a really good postseason. But
that's what I'm talking about.
That it's still a huge testament to this team, right? Because I mean, you talk about the fact that Aiden Hutchinson,
would have first team,
probably would have been a pro. Yeah, obviously would have been a Pro Bowler. Definitely, probably would have been an All Pro based on the season he was having.
Maybe
and you look at any other season outside of this one, Jameer's probably an All Pro, right? So the Lions are in such a good place because there are so many other players that are capable. Jared Goff in most seasons would probably be an All Pro considering the type of season he had. But again, that just goes to show how much talent there is across the NFL. But the Lions have a chance to showcase their talent starting this Saturday against the Washington Commanders on Saturday night. Super excited for this game, Morgan. Like we said, we're going to come back, do our film study, break down the Commanders, specifically probably focusing a lot on the offense and Jayden Daniels, because listen, that's where it's going to have to start for Detroit, is trying to limit that young man and being able to find ways of, getting their defense in a rhythm early on. But with that said, guys, that's pretty much going to do it for this video. If you guys are looking for any more additional Lions content, you guys already know you can head over to prideofdetroit.com. There are new articles being uploaded all the time. So as we get more press availability and all of those things, check out the website. There's going to be a lot of news coming out this week. And if you're always interested in staying up to date with what we're doing over here on YouTube, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Both of those things not only help out us, but it also helps you find our content that much easier. So with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.